to find great, follow me, new listings. Whatever you're looking for, you'll find it on Yelp. Yelp has a range of great traders and suppliers. Those are artists. Let me take you to the painters. There you go.
Good afternoon, everyone. You know, it's not fair as a business owner that you take all the risk to start a new business, knowing that most likely you're not going to get paid from day one. You really run the risk of actually not succeeding in your chosen direction. More importantly, you are likely to lose out on a lot of good night's rest and sleep, worrying about things such as how are you going to clarify your message, because you want to reach your market, your target market. So how will you do that effectively? You're going to probably worry about your sales. How do you generate new sales? You want to get cash paying customers, right? What are you going to do to make that happen? You might worry about the product or service that you want to push out into the market. Is it actually going to solve a real problem? And will people want to buy it? What about cash flow? I mean, come on, you know, the world revolves around cash flow. And if you don't have cash, you don't have a business. And so in order for you to retain the right to operate as a business, you got to carry a certain amount of overheads, and that's going to burn your cash. What about people? I always like to say that if I don't have people in my business, I don't have a business. That's customers, it's my team, it's my service providers. We are all a closely knit community that makes the world a better place. And lastly, but not least of all, there are so many rules and regulations out there that you need to comply with, and that can so easily sink your business. It's not easy. To be a businessman, in my experience, is literally like being punched in the face every single day. And when that happens, you're still expected to get up and move forward. What's the alternative? In my mind, if I don't get up and move forward, the stakes of losing are simply too high. I don't even want to imagine it. And so I force myself to get up. But you know what? The good news is that shouldn't be your biggest motivator for why you're moving forward. I know it's not easy. I mean, if it was easy, everybody would have done it. The reason I like to get up every single day is because I've got a passion for solving problems. I've got a passion to make the world, South Africa, and the communities that we serve a better place. And one of the ways in which I can do that is by following that thing that's my passion and converting that into some sort of a value add to people out there that's going to make their lives easier. And I try to communicate that in the best possible way. That's why I keep on getting up every single day. And so I'm delighted to introduce the YEP Entrepreneur Bootcamp. As you would have seen from the intro, there's a couple of action-packed episodes that's going to give you everything you need to know that you are the right person to start a new business. You are the right person to continue in the business. I mean, for a business owner, everybody deserves to get all the tools and information they need from day one so that they can avoid all those devastating mistakes that most business owners tend to make when they start new businesses. And so I'm delighted to also welcome to the team today 3 heavy hitters, and I'm going to in a minute ask them, them to introduce themselves, but I'll get the ball rolling. The first person, and as I mentioned your name, if you can please, reveal yourself from behind your video. The first person I want to introduce is Tando Hlongwane. He knows something about making it easy for businesses to make payments in the fintech space. And I'm super keen to hear when he introduces himself, about that. The second person is Alex Matthews. She understands what it is to start a new business. I mean, anybody who can say that they start and found 10 businesses on average per quarter, I mean, that's super stuff. So she can tell us a lot about what that means. And then last but not least, we've got Nick Dreyer joining us today. He does not only come from the home of the great white shark, but he can also tell you about what it's like surviving, literally surviving in a business shark tank. So welcome everybody, and thanks for joining today. Tanda, I wonder if I can ask you to start. Just literally take 1 minute and tell us a little bit about yourself and your business and what you do.
Sure. Thanks. Hi, I'm Tando, and we're from Leaper Payments. Leaper Payments builds contactless payment solutions for banks and fintechs. So the tap to pay type of technology you've seen. We also do some geo payments technology as well. My background's in computer science, so I'm a techie, but I will talk a little bit around my background when we get into the thick of things as well. Lovely to be here.
That's awesome. Thanks for joining us, Tando. I'm looking forward to hear some of your thoughts on what it's like to be a business owner. Alex, over to you. Tell us a little bit more about the Delta, please.
Hello, everyone. So I'm from the Delta, and we are a venture builder. What that means is we build ventures from scratch. We do that in a bunch of ways. Sometimes we work with founders, other times we work with corporates, and sometimes we even do it for ourselves. But actually, at the end of the day, we're also kind of a startup. We started 3 years ago, and after 3 years, we're now sitting at around 100, 150, 160 people. So the same learnings that you're all going to be going through are kind of similar pain points and experiences that we're going through ourselves as we do this and we build businesses with other people.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Nick, how about you? Tell us a bit more about yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Nick Dreyer and I'm the CEO of Veldskin Shoes. I'm a haphazard, by mistake, shoe salesman that started a shoe company about 5 years ago, having never bought anything online or even worn a pair of Veldskin. We started the company 5 years ago just because we felt it was a really good idea, and it was a little bit of a lightning bolt moment for us. And I've gone around a 5-year journey with a steep learning curve, but also a steep growth curve, which has been exciting and frightening all at the same time. And it's wonderful to be here, and it's nice to be with others that are trying to share this journey, because it's important to stay close to each other. As you said, Willem, this isn't easy. So it's good to be here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone. And lastly, my name is Willem Harov. I'm the co-founder of the Go-Getters Accounting Group. We pretty much also a startup, I would say. We've been in business for about 5 years, and it's been one heck of a ride. There's not a day that goes by that I don't see something new and not learn a new lesson. And so I'm super excited about today and this opportunity to discuss, with you guys what it's like to be in business. Again, this is the first installment of the YEP Entrepreneur Bootcamp. I think there's going to be a ton of value that's going to be derived if you guys, as the participants, engage with these videos that you're going to see, and also the forthcoming episodes. So if you haven't done so already, please go and register for each and every one of those events. Make sure you attend it. There's a whole host of awesome people that's going to be presenting in the upcoming episodes. For today, also I want to invite you guys to use the chat box to record any questions. I'm not going to promise that we will get to every single question, but we will try our best to answer as many as possible. We've got a lot of stuff we want to share with you. I mean, we are 4 business owners with a wealth of knowledge and experience, and in a sense, I wish we could have used 3-4 hours today at least to get through everything. But we're gonna try our best. And so today is all about spotting the opportunity. How do you know, as a person who wants to go into business, whether you actually qualify as a business person? And so, Nick, I wonder if we can kick off this conversation with you. Maybe take a few minutes, if you can tell us about, how does one go about identifying, what's the latest trends, or what are the opportunities out there, and how can I actually make a difference in it? And if you don't mind, maybe weave in some of your own Veldskin experiences in that story.
Thank you so much. It's a great question because, I think us, like everybody, is looking for something to sell. Ultimately, you're trying to sell something, whether it's a service product, and you're trying to find a way to turn an invoice into revenue. So it's, you know, from the helicopter view, it's a relatively simple process. But the trick is to find something or a service that somebody actually wants. And we're an interesting case because although there was a very niche market for feltskin shoes 5 years ago, you know, it's been around for hundreds of years. It certainly didn't take any preference in the fashion world, and it wasn't accepted mostly by the young. And I do think it had a very small sort of market. So when we came along, what happened was, and I mean, this is a happy mistake, but there's a lesson in it though. It was an organic conversation between my mate and I. I was driving and he was driving, and we were on the phone, and we were complaining about the Olympic team and that we're in Rio, and we wanted to know what they could have worn. And we had this conversation that they could have worn a feltskin. And at the time, I mean, I'd never worn a pair of feltskin in my life, and I just thought they were kind of boring. And but we had this idea that they didn't have to be boring. And I think that's the thing. It's like, you know, accounting doesn't have to be boring, but in the same breath, and the feltskin didn't have to be boring. So we had this young guy that like just photoshopped the laces in yellow and the sole in yellow, and then he did red and blue and sent it to us. But when he sent it to us and we scrolled through the images, this is in the same car journey, bang, it hit like a lightning bolt. And I keep telling people that it's a happy mistake, but we had the gumption to actually act on that piece of information and that like little gut instinct that told us we were onto something. And what we realized immediately is that we had a product potentially that was ubiquitous. It's a shoe, right? Everybody knows what a shoe is, but it managed to look different. It managed to have a voice inside a very crowded space. And it was because of the way it looked. And we felt that there was some brand equity there. The next step, of course, is after recognizing that you've got a product that could be unique, you have to act on it. And that's the trick. That's the tricky part. And we did that really quickly. By the time I arrived in my journey, which was 6 hours later, and this is absolutely true, you can look at our registration documents. We registered Feltskin Pty Limited, and the next day we were busy.
Well, that's incredible. I mean, I can remember as a school kid when my parents used to buy me shoes, the feltskin was the last thing I wanted to wear, and I think I picked up on what you said as well. And I mean, and by the way, I am wearing my own version of feltskin today, you know, as part of my team building exercise here. But tell us a little bit about how you were able to you know, change that impression and actually get more people to like the product, not just locally but also internationally.
We had to find a voice. You know, and our voice was South Africa. And, you know, I mean, as everybody knows, South Africa's got it's got a unique set of challenges, but and it's easy to focus on those challenges over time. But we must never forget that South Africa is simply put one of the greatest places on earth to live. And the voice that we found was to celebrate South Africa. You know, I tell people that, you know, all these things happen in the world, but, you know, South Africa is the only country in the world that is in the business of miracles. And, you know, we've had a few of them, and they've delivered. And so there's no reason why South Africa won't continue to do it, because we're good at it. And so we had to find a voice, and our voice was to be positive about South Africa. And that voice resonated not just here, but it also resonated globally, because South Africa is a respected place, and South Africa is a sought after place to visit. And once we attached the ethos of South Africa, which is resilience and humor and casualness and color and fun and endeavor, once you attach that to the brand, it had zero choice but to be authentic. And then it became a lot cheaper to sell that to people and to convince them to buy our shoes.
You talk about the voice, and that's interesting, because in my intro I also, you know, spoke about one of the pain points of any business owner, you know, being your message, clarifying your message. And I like the idea, you know, in terms of, you know, what business wins. A business doesn't necessarily win because they've got the best product, although that goes a long way to getting there. But it's the business who's able to communicate the benefits of their product the best way and the most consistently. Can you tell us a little bit more about your experience around your message, and how did you get your voice out there to be heard and clearly understood by the people?
Yeah, there's this term called engagement, which we all love to throw around on social media and all the rest of it. But the truth is, you need to be able to engage your audience no matter how you talk to them. And you've got to be able to do that whether you've got a product on the shelf of a supermarket, and you've got to be able to engage people if you're on social media. And you've also got to be able to engage people if you're selling directly door to door. The reality is, in order to convert an engagement into a sale, in our case, we have always found it cheaper and more effective to be authentic. And that is, and I say that with purpose, because the more convoluted your brand story is, or the less simple it is to simplify the principle, the more expensive it becomes. And I think I'm the poster child for this. I mean, we called our Veldskin business Veldskin, and our URL was veldskin.shoes. It's the it's the least creative business name in the history of business names. But the reason we did that is because it immediately resonated and connected with our audience. We shortened the distance between ourselves and them finding us. And I think that's a critical piece of the entrepreneur's journey, is to just understand that if you're going to get somebody to buy your product or service, you have to simplify the message, firstly, to make the distance as short as possible. Secondly, if you're going to make it up, you're going to continue to make it up. So rather be authentic, and then you'll never forget your message. And it's easier to talk about something that's real than that's not. And I think that's where we come from, is that our brand is built on absolute honesty of brand and honesty of value. And people resonate with that because we never deviate from it, because it's just, simply put, the simplest version of the business that we could have been.
Oh, that's super valuable. I especially like the bit about authenticity. I almost want to equate the opposite of authenticity to lying. When one starts to lie or be dishonest, you actually start to forget the previous story that you told, and it actually starts to confuse yourself. I just love authenticity, and in my experience, the business community out there also appreciates it and responds to it. Just a quick question there from the audience. Anyone can jump in on this one. From Heidi, is there a difference between a startup or a small business, or is it just semantics? Because I think we all use the word startup in our intros.
Okay, so I think Alex might be the best person to answer this. But when you stop being a startup, can I just claim that we're still a startup? I mean, we're 5 years old, but we're still a startup. Am I allowed to do that, Alex? Can I just keep saying I'm a startup for the next few years? I'll answer it very briefly.
I also wondered this about us. I was like, I feel like we're more like a small business. We're like, are we cool enough to be a startup? And then but I think it's very much the same thing.
Yeah. And sorry, just to the question about, is it semantics? I don't think it is semantics. I think there's a difference between a startup and a small business in terms of stability. A startup is frenetic and fast, and often has a very liquid income statement. And by liquid, I mean it fluctuates vastly as money flows in and out of the business, and as your cash flow starts to go up and down. And I think the differentiator between a startup and a small business is a small business starts to hit stability in its income statement, and you could probably start seeing 3 to 6 to 9 month forecasting that looks slightly less turbulent than a startup. So in my opinion, I hope that answers the question. I don't think it's semantics, but they are similar, but I'd much rather stay a startup because it sounds cooler.
Tando, any thoughts from you? Do you think there's a difference between a startup and a small business?
Geez, that's an interesting one. I think the tech world would push back a bit, but I do think in many ways it's different sides of the same coin, really. Different sides of the same coin. I think at the end of the day, we're all, as long as you're constantly taking feedback and you're iterating on it, you probably meet the core principles of being a startup, which I think are basically what startups are all about. You're listening to your customers and you're trying to move as quick as you can to address their needs. And I think small businesses and startups do that the same. The one is just like said before, the one probably just has a little bit more stability when it comes to income now.
Yeah, absolutely. In my world, the only relevance of classifying myself as either or is when I do my SARS income tax return, but then I use different terms. I'm either a micro business or a small business, or I'm dormant. And so I'm gonna try and encourage as many people as possible to focus on being a cash generating business. That's what I'm interested in. So that's awesome. Let's switch gears for a moment. I want to. So I think we heard a very good analysis of just spotting the opportunity and getting the message out there so that people can start to develop an interest to get to know you. And then you want to enlighten them through that process and hopefully get them to a point where they eventually buy from you. And I've mentioned the idea of generating cash. And I think you only generate cash when you're a successful business or when you do things right. So Alex, I want to ask you, what does a successful business look like?
Goodness, that's a difficult question. I mean, like, I think that what most people will say is when you're earning revenue on a continuous basis, like you kind of, that's a success. I think for a startup is when you get your first paying customer. That's always a win. But for me, like, I guess it's also about like coming back to like what is a successful concept or like evaluating a successful concept. And it really is when you're solving the pain points of a particular customer. If you've got a business, if you're not actually addressing a customer's needs and you're not solving the pain points, then you're really not, in my opinion, going to be successful in the long term. So it really all does come back at the beginning of this thing to really like evaluating the opportunity that you're working on, or validating the concept that you're working on, and ensuring that it's actually like solving the needs of the customer that you're trying to sell to. Because if it's not doing that, then I think there are a lot of vanity metrics that can help you think that you're doing well, but in the long term, it's really not going to work out.
Yeah, I think a lot of people out there, continuously hear the idea of solving pain points. I wonder if we can unpack that sentence for a while. Let's start with how do you even know what pain points are? Where would you start?
So I think that when it comes to like actually identifying like an area that you want to go, or like an area or like a problem that you need to solve, pain points are when you go and actually talk to your customers and you try to identify what are they struggling with in relation to that job to be done. They're trying to get something done, and they have a pain point in that process that presents in itself an opportunity for you to solve. So the way that I would kind of approach like identifying pain points is you really just need to go and get in the room with your customers and actually start talking to them about what they're trying to achieve and what they're struggling with. Because if you can solve what they're struggling with, then you have a value proposition. And if you can solve something that they're struggling with, they're willing to pay for, then you have a potential business. So you really want to look at like the desirability, like, is there a pain point there? Are you creating a solution that is going to like serve that pain point, and are they willing to pay for that solving that you're going to be doing for them? So it always just comes back to basics, like of talking to your customers, and that's where you start to really like identify all of the pain points that really just present themselves as opportunities for you to solve.
Oh, that's cool, because I suppose without putting people in a box, it's easy to say, well, you get people that likes to focus on problems, and there's people that likes to focus on solutions, right? And I know there's many more colors out there.
There's an interesting thing, and it's the comparison of like a vitamin. A vitamin and a painkiller. And they say that if you have a product that is not solving a pain point, you've just got a vitamin. You want a painkiller, something that's actually going to be solving the pain of your customer. But if you just got a vitamin, it's like a nice to have. And I always kind of talk about value propositions in that, like, you have an ice cream and sprinkles. Like, the ice cream for me represents you solving their pain point. People don't go to the ice cream shop to buy the sprinkles, which makes it look pretty on top. They come to you to buy the ice cream, which is effectively like the solution to the pain that they're experiencing. If you scatter some sprinkles on top or you give them a vitamin, that's just a nice thing, like, at the end of the day. And like, so it really kind of, if you can like take your value prop back to basics and really kind of look at, like, what am I solving for my customers? That's when you can really start to evaluate, like, am I actually providing ice cream or sprinkles? And if you're only giving sprinkles, then you need to kind of, I think, like, take a step back and really like figure out, like, is this actually the right? Is this going to be valuable enough for my customers?
Absolutely. I see there's a great question there from Martin. Martin Hutton, how do you know if pain points are worth solving if you don't have customers yet? The plot thickens.
It's so easy. You just go and talk to people. So we obviously like have to do that quite often, where we try to like identify like potential opportunities, and like we don't have a product yet often. Like we haven't even come up for an idea for a product. We want to go and identify like what opportunities potentially exist in a space. So there's so many ways that you can do that. Like the first can be is you go and talk to customers. So you want to go and talk to like 5 to 10 customers and actually go there with like a structured like guide for yourself as to like what am I wanting to learn? What space am I trying to identify if there are pain points about? And if you're getting consistent finding that 6 out of 10, 8 out of 10 people are all experiencing the same pain point, that's already telling you that there's potentially an opportunity there for you to solve something. You may not have even figured it out then. Once you figured it out, then you can go back to them again, and like even before they're paying you as a customer, that's what I always say. You can actually, someone asked the question about, do you have to build something to learn? What we were saying, building, I meant like technically building. On my LinkedIn, my comment was fail fast, learn quickly. Do you have to build a product? You don't have to build anything. You can put your concept together in a brochure and go and sit with your customers and say, ask them to read through it, or potential customers, ask them to read through it and ask them, like, what do you think about this? Do you think this is something that would be interesting to you? If 5 out of 5 of them are like, I'm never going to use this, then there's no point building it. Like, you need to go back to the drawing board. So you really, like to that point, like, the best way to actually kind of start learning whether there are pain points for you to solve is to get out of the door and go and talk to the people that you potentially want to be solving problems for.
Yeah, that's awesome. I see there's a comment. Sorry, Tando, please go for it.
So I think just to add on to what Alex is saying, he's definitely right that at the start, and I can literally speak to an anecdote where we literally sent out an email to potential customers and we got feedback on whether or not what we're doing was the right thing. But it gets more interesting once you've gotten that initial set of feedback. And that's when you have to try and just create the smallest version of what you can, just to see if people are willing to pay for it. And again, you don't need to build the fanciest version of what you're doing. Like once you've gotten some people be like, okay, we're interested in this, then you really want to test if they're actually going to put money behind it. And that's what Alex was saying. It's like, it's great if you're solving a problem, but even better is if someone's willing to pay for it. So even getting to a customer that's willing to pay for something, you don't have to build the entire thing. Yeah.
And if you can get someone to like, it's one of like the experiments that you can do is, can I get like someone to like pay before I've even built my product? Tesla's is a great example. Like before they'd even built the cars, they had people like putting down their deposits, and they actually approached it in such an experiment-driven way. They first put up a landing page to see if anyone would even like sign up, like join it. Then they said, okay, cool, will you guys pay now? You've now tested the desirability that people wanted and viability. Now go and build the cars. Like, don't go and build them first. And it was such an amazing example of like how you can approach something in like an experiment-driven way.
Yeah, absolutely. I was about to use another Elon Musk example with the Starlink, where they also went on a pre-sell type of approach by building a landing page and actually getting subscriptions, for that satellite. And I mean, I think 2023 in South Africa. So I mean, and they've already got a whole host of people, queuing. So, and I see that Daniel shares that sentiment in terms of pre-selling to validate the need for your product. Nick, please go for it.
No, I just wanted to give an example. Feldskin shoes. We sold our first 350 pairs of shoes before we'd found a manufacturer. We in fact photoshopped them and sold them, and then immediately had to phone everybody and say sorry that we weren't a scam, but that we hadn't actually made shoes before. And we asked everybody if they would be prepared to wait for us to make the shoes, or if they would like a refund. And not one person asked for a refund. And again, we were just honest about it. And they said that they were more than willing to wait. And those people waited 4.5 months for their shoes. And but the lesson was that people wanted to buy it, and that we were off to the race.
That's amazing. And I mean, that's testimony to the fact that you actually did find your voice very effectively and very quickly, and you were able to translate that into a clear, easy, understandable message that people could relate with and actually convince them to buy and even part with their money before they got shoes on their feet. So well done. I think that's really a great example there. I see there's a question. It's Luanda. She's from Creative Arc. And the question is, how do you go about building a team practically as a startup when you have no revenue to pay them? Who would like to answer that one first?
It's the question. Yeah, listen, Tando, you have a crack at it because I'm dying to hear an answer.
Yeah, I think the first thing to recognize is, you're gonna need some pretty committed people, and that's where you build a founding team. I think that's probably the start. You're going to have to accept as well that 100% of nothing is definitely not as great as maybe 30% of something really great, and that means bringing on a co-founder. And I was going to speak a bit about, when looking at opportunities, I think skill sets are sometimes quite an important thing as well. You really want to be the best at what you do. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have the skill, but that's where bringing on co-founders comes in, right? You bring in teammates who can complement your skills. And I think that's probably the starting point. You have to accept that you're going to have to bring someone on. And even with your first set of employees, you're probably not going to have enough money to pay them market-related salaries. So you're going to have to create options and vesting schedules and all of that stuff. But the short answer is you're going to have to give a part with some equity and really get people who buy into your vision to jump on board. Yeah, I think that's the short answer.
That's where creativity comes in, right? You got to come up with unique solutions to solve your own problems and moving forward, right? Alex, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's really tough. I agree. Like, you want to find a good founding team, and like, you really need to find people who are going to bring the skill sets to the table to enable you as your founding team to do as much as possible yourself, because at the beginning it's always the hustle. Like, there's that Gymshark guy in the UK who launched that amazing brand, and gymwear brand, and it's now huge. And I think at the beginning it was him sitting with his mum in his garage sewing together clothes and shipping them out. So you can even ask your family to help you out. Hopefully they'll do it for free. But yeah, it is trying to find that founding team. And I think obviously there are things that you can do, like from a shareholding perspective, but I think you also trying to create employee incentives. But I think you need to be careful with that at the beginning as well. In trying setting up a share options pool at the beginning, I would avoid that. You want to keep them as lean a team as absolutely possible, and retain as much equity as possible, obviously, as well. The simpler your cap table down the track, I think the better. But yeah, I think it's about trying to, if you can find people who buy into the vision and potentially are patient, and you can create different kinds of incentive structures for later down the track if they're not core founding members, like your founding management team, then I think that's kind of probably your best kind of strategy.
Alex, you said you used the word vision there, and please allow me to park there for a moment. A few days ago on social media, I had a mini rant on mission statements. I come from a corporate background, and I used to dread those times of the year when we were called into the strategy meeting. For us, it was every 6 months, and it's time for the mission statement. And let's all remember the mission statement and memorize it. And when they wake you up in the middle of the night, you have to be able to say it without flinching. And I just could never do it. Those mission statements were always super boring, unattractive, and it just sounded like it was written by a bunch of lawyers. And so, as I reflected on that, I always used to think, well, when I was in high school, we actually used the word mission in our everyday street language. I would say to my mates, hey guys, let's go mission. Don't you think that mission of yesterday was just so awesome? And the reason we all bought into it was because it was aspirational. It was super clear. There was a proper timeline to it. And we knew that the mission is going to mean something for us. Well, as kids, maybe not life-changing, but it obviously meant something enough for us to move into action. And I think you using the word vision, if the people buy into your vision, I think is absolutely key. In my experience, I like to hire for personality. I like to surround myself with people that gets it, right? Who I can say to every morning when we wake up, hey guys, let's go mission. We want to go and reach X thousand business owners to help them make the world a better place. And for me, that's super key. I think one should never, ever underestimate the importance of mission in your business.
And I think that it makes, even with the founders, or some of the guys we work with, the one guy, he didn't have a big enough vision, and he was going to try and fundraise. And I like looked at what he put down. It was very much what they were doing at that stage. It was like, we do, the examples, we do market research. I'm like, you're selling to an investor. Where are you going? Like, what is your, like, where are we going to be in 2 years? And he's like, oh, that's so big. I'm like, you have to think big, because like that's what gets the team excited and like driving towards this end goal, So I think it's very important to have like that goal in mind of like, where do we want to get to? Like, this is where we're starting, but like the vision needs to be big, in my opinion, I think.
Nick, what gave you the audacity to think that you're going to clothe the Olympic team with your shoes? Tell us about that.
Naivety. I say that loosely, but one of the reasons a child jumps into water is because he doesn't know that it's cold, or he doesn't know that it's high if he jumps from a ladder. If you don't really know how hard something is, then you give it a go anyway. And we've always said it in our business that naivety has been our superpower. And I'll just remind you, I don't come from fashion or footwear or apparel. I've never done any of this stuff before. And when you undertake to get in touch with the Olympics to put shoes on them, nobody knows how to do that. You can't hire a consultant or an agency that can try and figure that out for you. And I think this is the nature of an entrepreneur, is to just try, and also to just carry on trying, because it's often the solution is so strange, and the way you come to a solution is so bizarre. And in the case of the Olympics, it literally was bizarre. We had no way of doing it. I didn't know anybody at SASCOC. I had absolutely no network. So we put out a video on Facebook, and I just asked our community, if anybody knows how to talk to the folks at the Olympics, please let us know, because we want to put our shoes on the Olympians. And the next day, Ravi Govender, the CEO of SASCOC, phoned me and said, I heard you're looking for me. And that's how this whole thing began.
It's brilliant.
And I mean, but you know something, it's brilliant in its simplicity, and it's also brilliant in its lack of genius. The truth of the matter is that you just got to try. And I think we often find very good reasons not to try to do things. As humans, we're very good at that. We can convince ourselves not to try. And the reality is, if you just gave it a go, you'd probably get it done, because we're all smart and we're all talented. So, and it's possible.
Tando, you're not only operating in South Africa. So I mean, I'm sure if you speak to any person about going beyond our borders, going beyond what we're comfortable with, what gave you the audacity to think that you can succeed elsewhere?
Yeah, no, that I won't lie. Sometimes I ask myself the same question. I think when we first started working outside of South Africa, even my mom was like, "Are you sure about this?" Yeah, no, I think in many ways it links to what Nick was saying. Yeah, firstly, you don't realize that when you enter sort of new countries, you're facing a whole new set of laws and regulations that you're not even ready for. But again, I think sometimes the best way to learn is to just dive right into the deep end and start swimming. Naivety definitely helps. But yeah, I think to Alex's point as well, you really have to try and think a little bit bigger than your immediate vicinity. And I guess sort of one of the things that the tech world tries to push is the idea that you can build a global business. It's a very scary thought, and very difficult, extremely difficult as well. But I think having a bit of naivety and the right amount of ambition to try and build something big with a big vision is what has allowed us to enter countries that I've never even visited. Like, I've never actually been to Botswana, which is weird, but we have a client in Botswana.
Don't say it too loud. I think the common thread I'm hearing here is like fear, naivety, ignorance, and I'm almost too scared to punt that as attributes. But I suppose one could say, if it's not big, it doesn't scare you, it's not big enough, right? And so, we kind of, work out the strategy as we go. But one last question on the topic of products to you, Alex, before we change gears again. I see Stefan Rousseau is asking, how can you best prototype a user experience without having an actual product or MVP ready?
So it depends. I mean, there are different like levels of like fidelity. Like the easiest thing, or like what we use a lot when we're testing like digital products, is we'll put together prototypes. So the first thing you can start with is just actually storyboards, just sketching out like your solution, okay, and like literally by hand, and then sitting with customers and showing them through it and getting their feedback. That's like the leanest you can start. Then you can try and create like a high fidelity prototype. So I'm talking more about like apps and web applications if we were going to go that route. You can use things like Figma. Someone gave another example of proto.io. There are a lot of these amazing pieces of software, and there's so many courses online for you to learn how to like, you know, put things together, where you can actually create like a clickable prototype. So they open it up on their phone and it looks like an app, or on their computer, and they can click the buttons and it navigates them through it. But you want to be sitting there with them. You want to be asking them to talk to you. You want to be like understanding what they're experiencing at every step of that prototype. So those are kind of two or a few different examples that you can use for, I guess, digital products. It's interesting because there are other types of techniques you can use, which is where you provide a concierge service. So or you do like a Wizard of Oz. So where you, for like, let's just say, what's an example? I'm trying to think of an example of a Wizard of Oz right now. I don't know, Tando, if you can help me out. Is where actually you pretend everything's happening in the background digitally, but you've actually got like 20 people like running around, like, you know, you try like pretending that this thing is all automated, and they get a message like, your purchase was successful, and it seems like it was really quick, but actually it was huge. And there you're kind of like simulating how it would be if it was actually working, that it's enabling you to test the concept and whether someone's willing to pay without having to build the engine, if that makes sense. So I don't know if you had a better example, because that was bad.
It was all right. It was all right. I think an interesting example was, we actually did a sort of a chat. It was a chat-based payment solution. And at the time, we had a payment solution. We didn't have the chat piece. So we literally had guys sort of stitching this together. And it actually held together for a bit. But then, you know, guys started getting a bit like, and we had to be like authentic. We're like, listen, this is the concept. I think that's the important thing, is you want to help the person understand what this could do. But again, I think going back to Nick's point about authenticity, you know, just being honest and saying, listen, this is a pilot, and this is a POC of what we can do. And then going back and really figuring out how you're going to ship that becomes your next big problem. But yeah, that is a perfect example of Wizard of Oz. Yeah.
And I think also in a sense that speaks to the whole question of scaling your business. You're not going to scale and build something massive in order to deliver something if you're not sure you're going to have customers, which now takes us back to the initial question. Because it costs money, it's cash flow, it's extra overheads. And so you're actually happy to suffer a bit for a short while you're testing it out. And when you're sure, that's when you start to scale and build a machine that's gonna be awesome. I want to switch gears and I want to go to the last thought of today. So I see we've got about 15 minutes left. And I want to ask you, Tando, if you can help us unpack the idea of you as the business owner, the entrepreneur, matching what you're good at with what you're trying to achieve with the business. I mean, tell us a little bit about that and how important passion and personality is in this whole equation.
You're on mute.
I'm not going to, you said it, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I was saying, you know, assuming you survive, I guess, all the valleys of death that come with, you know, the really tough journey of being an entrepreneur. It's going to be a pretty long journey. So you really want to work on something you enjoy. You know, and oftentimes, you know, even think about the opportunity, most likely it should be something that was probably your own pain points as well. And so you're ideally super passionate about it. I think that's a super important part, probably more important than the skill set piece. I think Nick is testimony to that. You know, speaking about the fact that he wasn't really even in fashion to begin with. And I think the same applies for a number of entrepreneurs. But you know, there has to be some part of you that actually enjoys what you do. If you don't, you're not going to be able to tolerate all of the punches in the face you get every single day. I think that's probably a really big piece. And it's an interesting one, like for me, because I think I had a big passion for tech. And I actually, it's weird. I started off doing like finance and accounting. That was my background. But it's also interesting to find your intersections of things, because I ended up in financial technology. So somehow the universe led me in the direction of, the stuff I'd learned sort of doing finance and accounts with what eventually became my core majors, which was computer science. And in some ways to say that, it would be great for like your skill set to be the most dominant thing. But more importantly, it should definitely be something you enjoy, because it's going to be a tough journey and a long one too. Yeah.
I've got an interesting question, which maybe you can also help unpack, Tando, and then I'll throw it open to the rest of us as well. Justin Feldman asked if you've got multiple startup ideas and visions that you're excited about. So immediately that speaks to what you might be passionate about, and possibly time sensitive for the market in super early stages. Is it better to try to do the validation for one each at a time, or move all of them forward in parallel?
That's an interesting. I think it's very, very difficult to take a business very far if you're not focused. I think it's extremely, extremely difficult. Well said, I do think though that a lot of companies actually have micro products that are slightly different and are often running multiple experiments at the same time. I don't know how far and wide, I guess, the differences are between the ideas you talk, the question is focused on, but sometimes, and I'm sure even Nick would say, like, even within the shoe industry, you'd probably be piloting and trying out different design ideas all at the same time. I would say though that you should definitely try and focus on a core problem, and it should be aligned to that. There could be different experiments and different ideas on how you deliver on that. But just pick the one that customers are giving you the most feedback on, the one that's actually the customers want the most. I think that would be the short answer. I don't know if anyone wants to add on that.
Thanks, Tando. Yeah, Nick, I'm interested to hear. Oh, sorry, Alex, you want to go first? Go for it. You're it.
You can go. Well, okay, I'll quickly just drop this. Like we will often do that. Okay, if it's time sensitive, that's a bit trickier. But we'll often like try to validate. If you're at that early stage of research and you maybe have a few ideas, you maybe do want to research each one of them and try and do some light validation on each to try and figure out which one is worth giving all your energy, right? So if you have 3 ideas, there are some easy like metrics that you can use to help you size the different opportunities. Like, how big is the market? How many competitors are there? Like, you go and speak to a few customers just to do some light validation. Do you have any unfair advantage? Those are like these basic questions that you can just create like a matrix for yourself to kind of like say, okay, cool, this is probably the one I should go with first and let me run with that. But I agree with Tando, like you once you get going, like it's very difficult because like it really does take all of your energy to do one well, and you don't want to kind of like dilute that effort by trying to do too many things. Once you've kind of really get into it.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Nick, what about you?
Yeah, there's always a temptation as an entrepreneur. In my case, we also invest in a couple of things you think you've got 2 horses that could win the same race, and so you get in, you try and do other stuff. And the more you do it, the more you realize that you've got one horse that has the best chance. But that's kind of, it's a silly analogy, but I find myself, the more I focus, the quicker and more successful it gets. And I think that's kind of the rule of thumb. That said, I think to Alex's point about light validation is critical. And that doesn't necessarily take away from your focus, as long as that light validation is heading to a greater goal or to a greater outcome. I think that's important. But if you want to revolutionize vegetable stores at the same time as like creating a payment gateway, as at the same time as starting a shoe business, I think you should think about which one you really want to do. To Tando's point, what excites you versus what you think might be the easiest route to success, because often that clouds your judgment. I think you should do what you really want to do and have fun doing it, But don't necessarily go for the one that you think is going to turn you into the next Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg. It just doesn't work like that.
No, absolutely. I agree. And I think the common thread I'm hearing here is it's really about focus. I think all three of you have said that. It's super important. Before you know it, you're inundated with all sorts of things that's going to just keep you busy. And ultimately, you won't achieve anything. And then I think passion and stuff you enjoy. And I want to add another one, cash flow. I think it's super important to understand which of those options is going to move your money needle in the most significant way, because then once you've collected that cash, you can then start to focus on the others and rake in even more cash. So yeah, absolutely. I wonder, before I go into sort of the approach to land, because we've got about 8 minutes left, to the audience, if there's any other questions you want us to answer, please feel free to add them. There's still some time left. But I think as we prepare for that, I want to ask each of you to answer the following question, and that is, as a business owner operating in South Africa, and before we ask that question, let's quickly deal with Boniswa's question that just came in. How important or difficult is it to find like-minded people to work with? And then I'll do my landing question. Anyone can answer that one.
I think it's incredibly important, but it doesn't necessarily have to be difficult, because you know, just don't go into a finite skill set. I think everybody here will agree that it's better to find people that you want to work with than to find the exact tool for the right job. And so I think it's critically important, but it doesn't have to be that difficult. That would be my answer.
Thank you. Alex?
I feel like it depends if it's like your founders, like your co-founders or your team. Like finding like amazing team members like is like, I think like a little bit easier than finding a co-founder. I feel like when you're looking for a co-founder, you're looking for someone that you're basically marrying, and you're gonna have to get like you're gonna be with a lot, disagree with a lot, and like you really want to kind of make sure that like you like have similar vision, kind of have similar value sets. I mean, diversity is always good because like you want to bring people with different like ways of thinking together. But I think that it is something that like I think it's quite a big decision, like going into founding a venture with someone. So you really want to make sure that's the right person. Because I think it can also go wrong. I've heard some like founder stories that like when they don't end up going right, then it's not a fun thing. So yeah, that's
awesome.
probably what I would say.
Thanks for that. Tando, Sadiko wants to know, how much does negative feedback affect your business ideas?
You know, if you go back to the point about taking punches every single day, I think negative feedback is super important. You know, what it does is it brings you back down to earth. It reminds you, I guess, of what are the key things you need to get right, because we're not going to get everything right. And negative feedback oftentimes is the most honest. So yeah, what you really want to do is try and extract, you want to put feelings aside and try to extract from it what's the key lesson you can take from it and how you can improve. And so I think negative feedback is super, super important. It's not the greatest though. Everyone wants to feel like a champ and get compliments, but it's actually super valuable.
I heard a good lesson from somebody I respect a lot, and they said, when you're born and you're a baby, the only thing people tell you is how cute you are, how wonderful you are, you smell nice. And so never ever will a baby receive, you know, feedback. But as you grow up and you start to engage with the rest of the world, you might engage in antisocial behavior. And so feedback is the world's gift to you to learn how to engage with your environment. And so if people can't take feedback, then it means they're still babies. And no offense meant to anybody, but that's a good analogy to think about it. So I agree with you. Thanks for that, Tandu. I see there's two questions, one from Luanda and one from Jeffrey, all about where do you find co-founders? Alex, I think it sounds like it's your question, that one. You know, if you want a co-founder, where do you go look for them?
Oof, I think it depends. It depends on what like the marketing that you're entering, right? Like I think that obviously it's like when you're at university, I think it's a lot easier because you know that if you're wanting to launch like a tech idea, there are so many I think like initiatives, for example, in like UCT where you can go into the information systems or the com sci department. And there are a whole bunch of I think of communities within that space where you can go and just start to network and try and find people who think the same as you. Once you leave university, I think it becomes a bit trickier. Hopefully like you're working on something that you are passionate about and you have experience with, and typically that means is you would have worked with people in a similar space, and that's probably where you're going to find people that you potentially want to launch businesses with, people who are also kind of have expertise in the area that you're wanting to launch. There are, I think, quite a few, I can't think of the names now, and whether there's one in South Africa where like potential founders, it's like entrepreneur first, where it tries to actually match entrepreneurs with each other, and it's actually intended to help you find co-founders, which is another option. I'm not sure, Tando, like, do you have any thoughts on this? Because like I feel like the way I found my co-founders was weird. I got a LinkedIn message, and like then we started hanging out, and then it kind of ended up going well. So like my story wasn't really applicable.
Yeah, no, I think it's luck, really. I can't even put it any other way. Like if you listen to Nick's story, like they're on a phone call, and now they're co-founders. Doesn't sound like there was much strategy or thought put into who we're matching with. But I think what's most important is it should be someone you respect, someone you and when I say respect, I mean in a way like you really back their work ethic. You think that it's someone you can enjoy spending time with, because you will spend a lot of time with them. But as for how you meet them, I think just one, probably put yourself out there and tell people about what you want to work on, and hopefully you attract people who buy into that vision. You can approach people as well on LinkedIn. I think that's a pretty smart thing to do, but you probably get a lot of no's. But you should just willing to take that as well.
We've got to unfortunately bring this to an end. It's been lots of fun, and I want to close by one last question to everybody. So 1 minute each person. What keeps you awake at night? The single biggest thing, and what advice would you give to the people out there that's got ideas but they don't know where to start? Tano, we start with you.
What keeps me up at night? Where my next sale is coming from. Keeps me up every single night. And advice for I guess everyone out there. Yeah, cash flow. Someone said in the comment section. But I think it's once you've found the opportunity, just get ready for a really long ride. And you're gonna have to do everything that the business needs, whether that's reading legal docs, you're doing accounting, you're reviewing financials and projections, you're in it with your devs, you'll be doing everything. So and it's gonna be a long ride. It's not a 2 years and you're selling a unicorn.
It's fast. Thanks for that. Thanks, Tando. Alex, your turn.
I feel like I'm actually the only CEO or COO in the room. So I do like opposite Delta. So what keeps me up at night is our systems and making sure that we can scale properly. Like we're growing very fast. So like that means that for me, it's about system design. It's about like and making sure that can, I guess, like support the team and like support our ability to continue to deliver quality services to our clients. So I'm the systems person, where I know my CEO would probably say like sales and growth. So that's what keeps me up at night. What was the other question, Will?
Your advice to the entrepreneurs out there with opportunities, and where do they start?
Oh, I think that, like obviously, like we said the word a lot today, validation. We use a really great resource called Strategizer, which I really love. And like if you need like support and like kind of like with how you should approach validating your problem, they have so much content online which really helps you to crystallize it and take like a data-driven approach to validation. So that would be like my one. And there's another book called Disciplined Entrepreneurship, which is also another one which I love. So get those two books, and hopefully that will put you on the right track.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Last but not least, Nick, thank you.
On question one, I immediately thought that should be my new life goal, is to come down to one thing that I lose sleep over. I was like, I think that just sounds like heaven. One thing. No, and sadly, you lose sleep about a lot of stuff when you're an entrepreneur, and often it's all new, and you lose sleep over stuff you never thought you would lose sleep over. So, and it's all the usual suspects: cash flow, revenue, growth, teams, culture, values, etc., etc. It comes hard and fast, and it keeps you up at night. And if it doesn't keep you up at night, then you're not really doing it properly. I think it's the less. I think the more you're worried about stuff, the more you're thinking about it. I think that it's a sign of investment in your own personal self, in your mission. And I like that word, mission. It shows you care. It's not great for your health. So like, find balance. But I'm just saying, what would my advice be? Yes, something Alex picked up on it. And I think you need to read a lot. Short bits of content are one thing, but I found so much value in books, and I read as much as I can. And I know that's a pretty broad answer, but the truth of the matter is that there's resource out there by people that have done it, and it's not something you can read in 4 lines on MoneyWeb, and it's not something that you can. It's not an inspirational tile on an Instagram account. It's something that you have to get into and you have to think about. And I think Tando's point about time and hard work, I think that's critical advice. Nothing happens as quickly as you hope it would. So get your patience dialed in, and that would be my advice. Read a lot.
Tando, Alex, Nick, thanks so much for the time you've invested today to be part of this. I had lots of fun. To the participants, thank you everybody for also tuning in and investing your time to listen to us. And I want to encourage you once again, go and register for the remaining sessions. There's a ton of value in store for you. Don't delay, do it now. Welcome to the YEP Entrepreneur Bootcamp, and have a lovely day.
Want to find great? Follow me. New listings. Whatever you're looking for, you'll find it on Yep. Yep has a range of great traders and suppliers. Those are artists. Let me take you to the painters. There you go.